Hello, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Manufacturing Tomorrow's Workforce. I'm Amanda Del Buno, and today, Christine LaFave Grace sits down with John Mitchell, President and CEO of IPC, a global trade organization serving the electronics industry. They'll discuss IPC's recent commitment to creating 1 million new skilled workforce opportunities during the next 5 years. Here's their discussion.
When it comes to tackling industry's workforce development needs, you've got to think big to get big results. That's the approach being taken by IPC, a global trade association serving the electronics industry. IPC recently committed to creating 1 million new skilled workforce opportunities for electronics professionals over the next 5 years. In support of that goal, IPC has created a range of training courses as well as credential programs to help give new and established workers a career path and help manufacturers meet their electronics workforce needs. I'm joined today by John Mitchell, President and CEO of IPC. John, thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you, Christine.
To start off, can you tell me a little bit more about what it means to be working toward 1 million new skilled workforce opportunities? What kinds of opportunities are we talking about here?
So they're varied. IPC, as you mentioned, serves the entire electronics industry, and so depending on where you're looking, those training opportunities vary as well. They can be specific skill sets into the people who are already in the industry. They can be job credentials, as well as looking at those who are not yet in the industry and preparing them. So as we reviewed the Trump administration proposal, we weren't the first people to sign up. We didn't just jump out there and say, "Oh, we'll do 1 million." We're more we were more measured. We actually took several months afterwards to make sure that we weren't double counting things our members were already planning on doing, but it's really things that we're going to be doing directly as a trade association. And so a lot of that, we have been educating the industry and certifying them for a few decades now. And so we looked at that and said, what can we do more on that front and what can we do differently? So a big chunk of that comes from, we probably would have done about 250,000 over that 5-year period here in the U.S. anyway. And so we said, what more can we do on that front? So we raised that target to about 400,000. And then we started looking at middle school and high schools, because one of the things that we hear from our members is, there's just not enough new workers available. And so as part of this effort, we're moving into working with high schools and community colleges and middle schools and trying to provide training in at that level as well to build some fundamental skills and awareness there. And so that piece alone is going to approach about 700,000 of that piece as we go forward. So that's a whole new effort where we've established a foundation to do that, and we're building education products with the industry to do that also. And then there's some other odds and ends also, sorry, to round it out to a little bit over 1.1 million.
That's such a proactive approach to be engaging students and younger students in that way. I think it seems sometimes like a lot of manufacturers and companies, individual companies themselves, they're looking so far down the line that they wonder what the immediate payoff is. How would you, number one, respond to that? And number two, as a trade association, what advantages do you have in engaging at that earlier level with younger students? And how do you see that paying off?
Yeah, great question. So, our members in the electronics industry, as you very clearly pointed out, they have today's business problems that they're working on. And yeah, they're looking toward the future, but if I don't have somebody to fill today's job, that's a challenge they have to solve right now. And we try to help them with those issues as well, which is why we've been doing the education programs for the last few decades that we already offer. But as a trade association, we try to take a larger view beyond just the company, and we're looking at industry needs as well. And so, getting that support to undertake that. And the reason we feel we're well suited to undertake this additional effort is, we have a few decades of educating folks at various different education levels, operators and engineers and all different kinds of folks. And so we have some experience in that area, but also we have a direct tie to industry. And so it's not like guessing what the industry core skills are. We actually know,
right?
Because we work with industry to develop these programs. It's not like IPC goes off in a box and says, let's create what we think is going to be the need. We don't feel like we have that expertise. We go to industry and work with them to develop such.
Plant Services Magazine recently completed its 2019 workforce survey, and one of the responses that we received, one of the things that our readers said that they viewed as most important for attracting new workers to industry was promoting better career development opportunities and getting the word out about the fact that, not just for entry-level jobs, this is a career that you can create within industry. Can you tell me a little bit more about how IPC is approaching that, both for new and established professionals? Getting the word out about the opportunity available in the manufacturing industry, whether that's through credential programs or courses or elsewhere.
Yeah, and nowhere more poignant is this felt than in the electronics industry. I mean, our industry changes so rapidly, right? I mean, just think about it. Just over a decade ago, there was no such thing as an iPhone, right?
Right.
And here we are now. It's part of these smartphones are part of our lives. We can't live without them. We have actually now there's neuroses about, separation anxiety. Right. But so because we're changing so fast, and we really don't know necessarily in some areas what the job will be in 3 or 5 and definitely not in 10 years. So how do you train for that? And the way we approach that is through stackable skills, toward job ends. So we work with the industry through what we call job task analysis committees. Mm-hmm. And we look at, we say, okay, what is the job you're struggling to fill? And let's say it's, an inspection engineer. Okay, great. And then you break that down and say, okay, what are the skills required for that? And we break all those down, and then we say, okay, let's build training programs to each of these skills. The great thing is even if you get trained for the inspection engineer job, let's say you later want to become a test engineer. Well, a lot of those skills are transferable. Right. You may only need 2 more different skills added to this, and now you have the credential to go do a different job. So we're really focused on, in both areas, we want to look at the needs for the job, but when we build for that job, it's not like, go take the inspection engineer course. It's let's make sure we've got all the stackable skills that are useful for that job. And you may have already checked many of those off, which helps to kind of future-proof things, because these new jobs come out of building blocks of, there may be some new content, but the majority of it is just repurposing other skill sets. And so that's how we kind of handle that. And then as we're bringing this out to students or existing engineers or people who are doing career changes, it really doesn't matter. We said you can assess what skills they have and then give them the different pieces. They can say, oh, I can test out of that. I know that already. I know how to type or whatever, the skill may be.
That's great. And again, like you mentioned, some of the core principles remain the same versus strictly the very specific technical aptitudes. Some of these core principles you can transfer, the appreciation of that, the building awareness, the understanding of, it's not going to be the exact same thing that you're going to be doing in 5 years, but you can apply this principle because you learned it and you gained an appreciation for what it means.
Exactly. And right now there is, maybe you've heard about it, a workforce need, right? As people are trying to find people, it's more and more difficult to find someone who already has the perfect set of skills. But if we can quantify it down into smaller chunks, you can go, well, they're already 90% there. I only have to train them in these 2 areas. And you have more options to bring in other people, and it's clearer to communicate how you're capable to do most of the job if you're not exactly 100% trained in a specific area.
That's great. And this being said, can you tell me a little bit more about the specific credential programs or the specific training courses that IPC offers?
Yeah, so the stuff we've been doing for the last couple of decades has been tied to our standards. Okay, so IPC is a standards development organization as well. We like to say that approximately somewhere between 85 and 95% of all electronics in the world at some point reference an IPC standard. And so It's pretty important to know how to use those and the various ones depending on where you fit in the industry. And so when I was saying, in our plan, we already had 250,000 or so of those already planned. That's what that's referring to. We do about 50,000 per year here in the U.S. And then another 50,000 around the globe. So that's one type. The other kinds of things that we're looking at is right now we've seen a strong need in the operator space, general factory workers, whether you're a printed board operator or an assembly operator. And so we've been working with the industry for the last couple of years on creating that set of skills and those programs. And we'll be launching those actually in about 6 weeks. So we're very excited about that. So those are, again, job roles, but like I mentioned, there's stackable pieces that go to it. We also provide general skills training in terms of like electrostatic discharge. When you shuffle your feet, you shock something. That's really bad for electronics. And just about anybody that works in a factory needs electrostatic discharge training. And so we found ways to provide that systematically and simply for the industry. And so those are just some examples, soldering and things like that.
So considering both your executive experience with training and career development, as well as these new efforts in the past couple of years, what have you learned along the way about key factors for success when it comes to workforce development?
Yeah, it really has to be a partnership with industry. And because where you're going to work is really who and what defines the jobs. And so that's why we've really focused on these job task analysis, these JTA groups, because, we pull people from the General Electrics, the Raytheons, the Foxcons, people from around the world that have these needs and can say, all right, here's how we are currently training those that show up. But if we can all systemize this together, in fact, it's very similar to our standards process. It used to be back in the world, 20, let's say 1,000 years ago when I was a young engineer, that everybody had rooms and teams of draftsmen and experts in every single area that their product would touch. And that's not as efficient. So a group like IPC comes along and we say, well, let's bring all those experts together. And now we get to take advantage of not just the knowledge in my company, but the knowledge in many companies to develop standards, and in this case, education products. So we take the best training techniques and the job skill sets and agree as an industry, these are the things that we need to train to. And then with them, develop those programs and go back to them and test them and say, is this what you need? Is this the right thing? And then once you have that kind of program, now you're actually teaching real things that are going to be utilized, as opposed to, some organization guessing, saying, oh, I hear there's a need for this. This is what I think. And even if they're guessing with one person, let's say we brought in an inspection engineer and they helped us create that program. It'd be okay, but it won't be as good as us utilizing the entire industry's input to make sure that it covers all the various aspects.
Right. Robust collaboration.
Yep.
Well, that's excellent. Well, John, thank you so much again for joining me today and for sharing this great perspective. I want to say thanks to John and to IPC. For Manufacturing Tomorrow's Workforce, I'm Christine LaFave Grace. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of Manufacturing Tomorrow's Workforce. Tune in again in 2 weeks for more workforce development insights.